Private equity, venture capital, management consulting, investment banking. These are some of the major domains where many students want to have their corporate careers. But what does it take to enter into such domains to beat the competition out there? In this video conversation, we have Divyam Gupta with us. Meticulous, planning, execution with dedication and focus are few things which defines him. McKinsey, Bain, BCG, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan are some of the dream corporate MNCs where many students want to kickstart their career with. However, this was not the case with him. He started his corporate experience on an extremely unconventional note. He worked with Invest India in the public sector for a couple of months as a policy and trade specialist. Today, he works in Matrix Partners India. Getting into the VC space with primarily BCom honors under your belt is no small feat. Stay tuned till the end of the conversation to see how he traversed his path.
Divyam, you've pursued BCom from Hindu College. So, what made you pursue BCom versus a course like, say, Eco Honors or any other course like, say, Statistics Honors or Maths Honors? What prompted your interest towards BCom from Hindu College?
So I think my choice was between Eco and BCom honors when I was after my class 12th. I think I genuinely didn't have enough knowledge about maths and stats as a career option also by then. Between BCom and Eco, I always had some sort of an affinity towards finance, towards accounting. And I
Oh,
realized that Eco honors turns out to be a slightly more academic pursuit than BCom honors is. And therefore, BCom also gives you a little more flexibility to explore interests outside of your academic career as well, and therefore I thought BCom was the right fit for me. I think looking back, I would definitely add that for students who are currently in their class 12, I would say stats and maths are some outstanding fields that they should definitely consider apart from the usual BCom and Eco as well.
yes, these are even I wasn't aware. Like, I was more focused on Eco and BCom. And Eco, yeah, I think we all know it's difficult. It's a course in itself. Like, you cannot do anything outside the course. So, like getting into DU has pretty high cutoff. Although of late, since last year, we have CUET, but the board exams, the board marks are like cutthroat. Like it has to be minimum 96 or above, or 95 for sure. So, were there any areas, or was it planned? Were you did DU was always in your mind, or it is something that you just went with your boards and it? How was your approach? If you just make us go through your approach.
Yeah, I think like me and like a lot of my colleagues, my peers as well, I think most people who are studying in top tier DU colleges actually have a very strict plan in mind, right? So they know from day one, okay, this is what we want to achieve, this is why we want to achieve, and this is how we have to go about it, right? So right at the beginning of, let's say, class 11th only, I think I had a vague mind that, okay, this is what I want to achieve out of the 2 years of my life in school that is there. Of course, 11th is just the foundation of, you're just understanding what stream you've taken. In class 12th, then definitely I think there has to be, very clear planning. You need to understand, okay, this is the point I want to reach at. This is the X percentage of marks, or let's say this is the level of, let's say CUET, whatever percentile I want to achieve. Once you have that target in mind, I think it has to be very, very targeted. You need to track every quarter. You need to be sure that, okay, by let's say in the first 6 months, I want to complete my syllabus. I want to get done with these subjects. In the next 6 months, I'm planning, let's say, a mock test series in this format. These are the scores that I can expect, let's say, in 9 months from the start, and so on. So I think it's a very, very carefully planned decision and a planned pursuit that everyone takes. And I think most of the people out there will follow a very strict planning around this. So I think for folks who are in class 12, I would definitely say that you need to be a lot more focused. Don't assume that, okay, things will fall into place eventually. I think from day one, you'll have to be on top of things and make sure that things are aligned to your goals.
You were quite structured in your approach and you were clear that you wanted to enter into DU. Makes sense. So, like, how did your awareness about Delhi University came by? Like, if you said that you started in 11, you knew that how you want to use the 2 years. So, if any idea, like, how the awareness of Delhi, because many people, I think even me back then was not even sure whether I want to go into DU. Maybe you're from Delhi, that might have a bias, but how was your exposure to DU? Like, how did you come
No,
to
so
know?
I I completely agree that there is some asymmetrical knowledge when it comes to Delhi University and what these cutoffs are. Everyone has a vague idea, but to have a level two understanding, I think I was privileged enough that I in my school we had a lot of alums going into Delhi University. My own brother was from SRCC, and a lot of friends, a lot of network was in these top tier DU colleges, which got me the insights, which got me the understanding. But I think right now, I think you guys are actually formalizing that knowledge base that students can leverage, but I think there is some asymmetry out there for the larger masses.
Yeah, I think on the northern part of the country, there's some affinity towards DU, but versus the southern or the western eastern. All right. So moving your taking your journey into college, you interned in Invest India. It's a government organization. Was there any reason or thought behind what made you choose a government organization experience or internship there versus say a private sector, like maybe like the big organizations that we usually most of the students in DU target for? Like say Goldman Sachs, Bain, like I don't know about how their internship offers are, but many other organizations that come for internships.
No, definitely, I agree. Even I had a couple of, those standard internship opportunities that you get that you see a lot of folks doing. I think for me, my goal was very clear. In terms of internships, it's just not another tick mark that I want on my CV. Rather, the experience needs to be valuable enough for me, right? So it solves two purposes. A, it exposes me to some sort of different experiences that I might go forward and take them forward. Because let's say sitting in a classroom doing BCom honors, you never really know what public policy is or what the government sector really looks like. And if you are interested in that, or if you want to explore that, the only way you can do that is actually working there for a couple of months or a couple of weeks at least. So that was one. And second, I think I value the quality of experience also a lot. I think these internships are not just something that, gets you the first job. I think these are very essential in how your thought process is structured, how you think about things, and how you even perform in that first job, because you've got some experience working, some experience in problem solving, and some sort of discipline also that it instills in terms of work ethic.
Okay. It basically takes you out of the college ecosystem where we are very on a very lighter note in terms of a headspace. Like it's a very free headspace, more formal and structured. So it was how if you could just go back and tell us any project or any work stream that is something that was a good learning experience or you thoroughly enjoyed out of your internship.
So I was basically working in the tech commercialization of Invest India. So that basically means that any invention, anything that's going on in any university in India, we take that and we understand what's the roadmap to actually commercialize it. Because we understood there's a gap between what an inventor or a scientist can do and what, let's say, a business or an entrepreneur can do.
Okay.
So that was my key focus area. So one of the nice projects that I did that gave me a lot of exposure was actually into the VC ecosystem. So we were looking how we can funnel VC investing into this entire tech, emerging tech sector that is there in India. So that involved understanding, okay, what do VCs look at? How do we tap into those? What are the VCs that are even relevant? Then understanding some of the tech inventions that a lot of these colleges, a lot of institutes had come up with, understanding, okay, who can be an entrepreneur that can maybe do an M&A, can maybe do an exit for that particular tech, and how we tie this ecosystem together so that it's then flywheels into, let's say, self-sustainable model wherein the VC is funding the tech, the scientists discovering the tech, and in general value is being created. So I think a lot of exposure, getting to talk to very senior folks, and real first principles thinking.
Okay, so it sounds pretty different, like from whatever I've been hearing, like quite value addition for me. So if any one example of something that so your internship focused around connecting the dots or filling the loopholes from what I can understand. If you
Yeah.
could, was there any particular if you can if you can name any project or anything, any say entrepreneur or any VC fund that had been involved? Is it allowed?
So, like being within the realms of what I'm allowed to share. So there was one project that we were working with in IT Delhi. It was an EdTech project. So professor along with some of their students had actually come up with this project. So we went there, we had product demos, we understood what the product is, and then there was a whole exercise understanding, okay, who's the right partner? Do you want VC funding? Do you want, let's say, institutional funding? Do you want someone to actually acquire and license it out? So I think there was a lot of hand holding, a lot of outreach that we did on that front, and then also a lot on the product development, understanding that if I were to run that business, right? Let's say the tech is done by the ITD guy, but if I were to do the business, then what sort of value additions I can do to that particular edtech product company.
Okay, this is quite interesting. Usually, examples help us to relate
Yeah.
these technical jargons. Honestly, like for someone who's looking at the hearing the video, watching the video, this example was something that I, as an individual, could also relate more. So, you also did your work post college there. I think 10 months or some more similar
Yeah.
months of stint you had. So, on a broader level, what are your key learnings or takeaways that you had and that helped you in your further corporate experience or corporate exposure?
Right. So I think Invest India definitely was a very, very unique experience that I had. So I did that about for 10, 11 months cumulative. Some of the key learnings that I took forward, right? So one was that when you're working in a small team, the need to be structured by yourself is much, much higher than when in a corporate role,
Mm.
right? Because in a corporate setup, a lot of things are aligned for you. A lot of things are served to you on a platter that, okay, this is the priority. You just ship this out. Here, there isn't like that is something that structure you have to create. So being structured first and being focused on what's the priority, I think that is one key learning that I use till now, even in my current job. Second was definitely go understanding what it means to go above and beyond, right? So there's obviously 4 or 5 things that are core KPIs in your job, but to understand, okay, how do we explore realms, how do you think value addition first in a company rather than JD fulfillment, for lack of a better word. So that I think when you have endless opportunities within the space and you can then venture out, you can take initiative, and you have that kind of autonomy, that brings in that mindset that, okay, I'm not restricted by the things that I'm being told or being assigned. There's just a lot more that can be done. And I think in third, in general, I think the exposure that I got, so my role was particularly trade promotion from every district in the country. So for the 10 months, I traveled across at least 7, 8 states, had a stint in Dubai as well, traveling to the remotest towns, villages, speaking to artisans, producers, farmers, you name it, even Indian bureaucrats for that matter. So just the kind of exposure, the kind of things that you realize. So maybe someone sitting out of Delhi doesn't realize what problems there are in the northeastern part of the country, right? And
Right.
those are very easy to ignore. That, okay, this seems pretty common. That is self-explanatory. Why wouldn't they do that? But to understand the nuances of these problems and then to develop that empathy and that understanding that, okay, these are cultural and regional nuances to every problem. I think that is a takeaway that's more personal and professional for me throughout my life now.
Very interesting. I mean, for me also, it is quite an interesting conversation in a way that because, like, even me, I think for many conventionally, how things have been, it's very corporate or it was just articleship experience. And going on ground and having an experience is very different from what we do theoretically in our laptops. I think that's a lot of differences over there. And now that I'm trying to do something of my own, I can actually experience that. So, very interesting. So, you shifted to Bain after this. What was your motivation to shift? And I think it must was Bain your campus recruitment because it was after college, or it was off like lateral hiring, or how was it?
Bain, I applied off campus, so they're a campus recruiter as well. During campus, I prioritized Invest India. So after a year of Invest India, then I decided to go ahead with Bain. Uh, and the primary reason there was that I understood that, okay, I have a lot more grassroots exposure. I have a lot more micro exposure that I have. I wanted to build some arsenal in the macro industry,
Hmm.
trend mapping in the macro analytical space as well. So to have a more nuanced view of the industry as a whole than just very grassroots operational issues. So I think I wanted that combination of skills from consulting and definitely develop that kind of structured and first principle muscle that I keep talking about as well.
Okay. Yeah, I can. Okay, that makes sense. So, how did you apply for Bain? Was it lateral? So, how did you approach your Bain interview procedure? Like, I think it must have been lateral then if it was not campus.
Yeah. So it was a lateral procedure. So Bain, I think around March or so, has some lateral openings depending on what the business is that year. So I'd applied to one such opening in the consumer products team, and the process is then just the same as the campus procedure. There are guesstimates, there are cases, and then there are some HR basic rounds regarding your previous work ex as well, and then they finally roll out the offer.
So, consulting, going for a consulting interview, one cannot walk with little preparation. It requires a couple of days or even weeks of preparation. So, any resources or material which you could, advise would be relevant enough to bank upon.
So I think, yeah, it does require, definitely, it requires a lot of extensive prep. I think would go beyond a couple of weeks as well. I think there's a lot of information open source available online. So you have all your major B schools, all your top DU colleges also now releasing case books. So I think one should definitely leverage that, understand, what's the structure, what's the ask. I think YouTube's a great way to actually go ahead and learn. There are fabulous videos. I think I can recommend Aditya Agarwal, who posts some crazy videos on cases, on guesstimates. So I think there is some effort, there's some discovery involved where you will have to figure out, okay, which area and how do I go about it. But I think a lot of these sources are available open source, so shouldn't be a problem for any candidate.
So if I could summarize, it's basically the top institutions, their case studies, and resources over YouTube.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay. So, you had I think, quite a diverse corporate stint till like you passed out in 2021 till now only. Like you were in government organization, then you went to Bain, and now you are in Matrix Partners, which is more like a VC fund looking into the investing on the startup
Yeah.
space. So then, how did this transition happen, or maybe like if you could just make us go through the transition, how it happened, the thought behind it, the rationale.
Right. So I think one thing that I would highlight is that when you're doing pre-MBA jobs, one thing that you have is definitely the time and the even the leeway to explore different opportunities and different industries, right? And the end goal must be that, okay, you understand what you want to do long term, and you're compounding over time with each job that you're doing. Right.
Right.
So I think if both of these goals are being met, then I think it's okay to switch jobs and to try out, and I would rather recommend that as well. My thought process was, after college, I had a couple of consulting offers that come to college. My only concern was that the opportunity at Invest India seemed very exciting, right? It was a new team. I was given the opportunity to be part of the founding team, and the kind of exposure that I could expect out of there, I knew no other corporate job could really give me. And therefore, that was one opportunity I wanted to take on initially. So after 10, 12 months of doing that, again, some sort of recalibration, understanding, okay, I like this job. I definitely, like the exposure as well. But am I compounding fast enough as I would want to, right? If my going, let's say, my future goal backwards. So is it a sure part to what I want to achieve in 5 years? Then maybe the answer is no, and therefore you realize, okay, what is that missing link that you really want to focus on right now. And therefore that's where consulting came in. I think consulting gives you a lot of skills, a lot of just the way you work in consulting, tight deadlines, insight first, understanding, okay, what's relevant, being super comfortable around data. So a lot of these things you are given, and you actually become a master of in at least 1 year or so of consulting. And therefore that is something I wanted to have in my arsenal. After doing these two stints, I was very clear that, okay, now what I really want to do, which might just be my final pre-MBA job as well, was enter the VC ecosystem, right? And when you look at the VC ecosystem, usually you will not find anyone who's a direct campus recruit in India, for that matter, at least at the pre-MBA level. Even post-MBA, the kind of profiles they prefer are generally people who have very diverse experiences, right? Because if someone's just done one single thing throughout their lives, and rather, let's say, consulting or a very corporate like role and not an operator or a startup role, then the issue is that you don't have the kind of exposure required to evaluate and assess startups. So I was clear that my industry preference was VC over consulting, and some opportunities came up, and then I got a consumer tech role in Matrix Partners, and therefore that well aligned with my goals. And I think right now also the growth trajectory that I'm on, I think it's definitely much higher than in consulting. So again, solves my two axes that I'm solving for.
Yes, I think quite thought out. Your all your approach and your thought process is very planned, meticulous. So will did PE space ever come to your mind? Because many people also target PE funds after consulting because it's easier. Like you need some basic either IB or consulting experience before breaking into either of the funds. Was PE ever in your thought, or you were very clear on VC?
So I might have partially considered PE, but I was super focused on VC. The idea being, see, PE and VC are essentially doing the similar sort of a role. It's just the stage at which they enter a startup, right? So what that changes is essentially the kind of skills and the kind of learning that you have on the job. So a PE learning is very, very, it's super useful, it's super insightful as well. But for me, what I really wanted was to look at very early stage startups, understand what growth trajectories look like, what trends look like, and how you evaluate and assess a startup at, let's say, the seed stage.
Okay.
in essence, right? Whereas PE is more focused on, looking at operational metrics, looking at super focused traction and exits that you can find from that startup that you're investing in. So I think it's more of a personal goal backward story that, okay, if you, where exactly do you want to play? But I think either of those are great career opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. So if you could just make us walk through your interview experience at a VC fund, how many rounds were there and like how many were the technical rounds or the HR round? A little brief.
Right. So I think I've interviewed with a couple of VC firms. I had an offer from quite a few of them. I think VC firms, interviewing with VC has been the toughest bit, I think, across all the three jobs that I've been. Usually, you can expect anything from 6 to 8 rounds of interviews. That is pretty standard. The idea here is that in consulting, like, you have a guesstimate, a case, a very defined round that, okay, these are the 3 rounds that are going to happen. In VC, that differentiation is less so. So the idea is that you meet everyone in the organization, or at least meet everyone in the senior management that you will be working closely with, and everyone should have comfort backing you that, okay, this is a candidate we want in the team. So how it usually happens is, first you have a few, 1 or 2 preliminary HR rounds, just understanding your profile, your background, your alignment, your interest for this role. Usually there's a case study then, which might be an investment thesis or a financial analysis that they might give you, that this is an industry or this is a company that we want you to evaluate and understand, and give us, let's say, 1 pager or a couple of pages on that. Post that, you will have your partner, your MD round interviews, typically 4 or 5 interviews you're going to have. In every round, there is some increasing depth of sophistication. So they are going to ask you slightly more nuanced questions. I think the key here would be understanding your alignment with the VC, with the job. B, what you've already done, whether you have that nuanced knowledge of what you've already done. Because if you weren't L2 in your previous job, you aren't going to be that in your new job as well. And third, I think about the sector as well. So let's say if I were applying for consumer tech, then I must have a very, very clear understanding of what consumer tech in India is, what are some startups doing, and maybe even what startups I would back, and what, let's say, some hidden gems that I have found out. So a very, very strict deep dive into the sector that you're applying to.
So if I could like again summarizing it, it's sector knowledge along with your viewpoint as well, because when we are entering into a fund ecosystem, we will be investing. So they want to know your viewpoint, what your ideology is, if you're evaluating an organization or a startup for that matter. If we now come to, like, say, coming back and looking, if somebody comes to you and what would be the factors, like, because we are so focused on, say, corporate sector experience. So, what would be the factors that you could recommend that someone can consider if they are applying for a job or they are considering a job in a government sector? Like, what are the pros and cons, or what can leverage a person to take a job in the government sector?
So I think the biggest factor I would say is impact and scale. So the scale at which you work and subsequently the impact that you can drive out of a government sector job is at least 10x what you can do in any corporate job,
Okay.
right? And that doesn't take anything away from a corporate role. I truly respect them. I am in one of them right now. But the idea is, when you're working with the government, these are large programs or large missions that you're working with, right? With a, let's say, a plan outlay of maybe even 1,000 crores or upwards, and therefore the stakes are pretty high. Your clientele in typical consulting world would be, let's say, grassroots level, employees, grassroots level individuals that you will be working towards, and your, let's say, your reporting manager now is an Indian, is a very, very senior bureaucrat. So that kind of exposure that you create and the opportunity to create impact at scale, right? Because here, what you are working towards can potentially change lives of, let's say, 1,000 people in the next 5 or 6 years. So I think those are some factors that can definitely push someone towards the government side if you are super enthusiastic about that. That being said, when we compare it vis-a-vis a corporate job, I think if you're super focused on, let's say, hard skill building, or you're super focused on, like, let's say, if I were to say, learning per unit time, if you want to maximize your learning at the fastest rate possible, I think then you might prefer the corporate route a bit more, because things are slightly faster there. But I think if you're super driven, if you're super clear that you want to drive impact, I think the government route is an excellent way for anyone to kickstart their career.
So this is more impact, the impact is very strong, and I think it's very direct. We see where the exactly the
Yeah.
funds are going, and I think that is where the impact comes in. And over here, I think the growth trajectory is much faster and quicker. So if you look back, Delhi University and Delhi University is a very instrumental university. It's not a college where you just go and attend. Most of the colleges are like that. That's the good part. So, how significant, if you would say, or relevant Hindu has been in shaping your thought process towards your career or defining you in terms of an individual and all your equations also? Because this is one of the few universities in commerce in our country which has a proper ecosystem, and we have to attend colleges.
No, I completely agree. I think Hindu has been instrumental. And I think I look at college as more from an access or a platform point of view, right? Because there's a lot more that a college gives to you apart from just, the academics that are there, which are obviously an integral part of the college as well. I think through Hindu, what you get is first access to some great peer groups that are there. When you see everyone around you is super driven, when you see people around you doing very different things, you're bound to, take note of them and evaluate them for your own self, that okay, I see someone in maths doing an actuarial program, so what merit is there in that? So I think that really broadens your horizons, that really opens the way you think about a lot of problems. And because everyone's driven, you're always in that mode that okay, I want to do more, I want to figure out, what's the next step after this. I think second, the alum group that also Hindu brings to you, I think that has been instrumental. I have on numerous occasions, just pinged some senior of mine that I've never even met in college, maybe a 2016 grad, 5 years elder to me, and they'd still respond, they'd still connect with me. So I think that is one of the very, very important things that one must leverage in college. And third, I think the overall learning experience that you get, right? So through Hindu, connecting with other colleges, be it SR, be it SSCBS, through societies, interacting with various different people in your own college, in other colleges as well. So I think that network that you build and that learning and exposure that you get through that, I think all of this compounds over time to deliver a value and ambition and a direction as well for you. And all three of those combined then translate into opportunities and progress for you.
Agree. I think it gives an ecosystem where we actually
Yeah.
transform. Like what I was in the first semester to what I was in the last semester, there was a very big difference. I was a very ambivert person. I was not very comfortable speaking out to becoming an extremely extrovert person, and that is just one of the changes. Um, Now, if somebody is coming out of 12 and they are in college, what would your two, three like major, like not everybody, like basic things that one should look into college, because college is about two, three things. One is focusing where your career is. At the same time, building relations. Both of them are equally important. Relations is something which satisfies us, builds us personality, and career is something that drives us. So, what would you just tell, say, if you were like a younger Divyam or someone coming up to you, what to make the most out of those three formative years?
So I think two main things that I would say. First, be more long term than transactional, right? So some trend that I see with a lot of young college students is they know a lot of these big brand names, right? They look at, okay, some folks are doing internships here, and they rush into the first, gratifying activity that they can find. So I see a lot of my folks interviewing at company X, interning there. I will also rush and do, just to have that checkbox. I see a lot of folks doing, let's say, 50 online courses in 2 months. I'm also going to do and replicate that. So I think a lot of the things that college students end up doing is more transactional, and at the end of the 3 years you realize, okay, that had really little value as compared to the time and effort I really put into those activities. So I think here the idea should be more long term. Use these 3 years to actually understand, okay, where you are really interested in, and how do you build your muscle to actually arrive at the, at the final point that you want. So if you want to get into consulting, figure out that okay, do I want to have some more analytical skills? Do I really should work into, should I work with a couple of startups before joining a consulting, right? If I have VC in mind, should I be more let's say resourceful in my financial arsenal, that I have my financial acumen that is there? Should I understand business models a little more? So I think instead of rushing into and trying to do 10, 15 different things that are not focused towards a single effort, I think you should be much more focused and avoid getting into this loop that, okay, there's just a simple FOMO that because they're doing this, I'm also going to start doing that. Right. So be more long term in that approach. And second, I would say you need to be a lot more driven and ambitious as well. I think there is a common perception that, generally first and second years, let me just have some fun, let me work on a few different things, and only in my third year then let me just focus on placements, because placements is then seen as an event and not, let's say, an outcome. So my concern there is that people who actually ace their placements, or whatever, metric you want to put at the end of the third year that you want to achieve, it's again a very carefully planned structure that they have. And this nowhere means that you don't have fun or you don't engage in extracurricular activities. It's rather the opposite. These people engage in more extracurricular activities and more fun activities than any other person would, but have a very clear goal in mind that out of these 3 years, these are 2, 3 things that I want out of it. And then it's structured and a carefully put in effort that, okay, this is something that I want to work towards while having my fun, while doing everything I can on personal development as well.
This was very relevant. The second point was extremely relevant. This many people don't know when they enter college that the first 2 years are the building base, and that determines how you're getting your placements. You cannot just awaken all of a sudden in your third year. Especially if you want the campus placements, you need to be driven and clear from day one. And most of the people who get the top companies, if you want those, they are someone who've been planning from day one of college. It doesn't come like in a couple of months also. I think that
For
is.
sure.
Thank you, Divyam. I think your answers have been it. Whatever your advice has been, I think you are a replica of that. Your answers are very thought out, very framed, and very well planned. But thank you so much for giving me your time on Sunday. And I hope this video is also helpful to many people for your different trajectory or path. And thank you so much.